On paper, Jayson Tatum just had an absolutely incredible year. He won his first NBA championship, took home a gold medal with Team USA, and also signed a $300 million extension. Despite all of this success, he has one major problem into 2025, and that's his jump shot. After proving he was one of the best shooters in the league early in his career, Tatum's jumper has steadily fallen off over the years to the point where it could be of no return. There's a bunch of different potential reasons that people try to throw out there when trying to diagnose this issue, including a wrist injury from a few years back, him putting on muscle and losing his touch, as well as his trainer messing up something that already worked. None of these are the reason why. In today's video, we're going to take a deep dive on Jayson Tatum's volatile jumper and try to figure out what went so wrong for him. When he initially came into the league, Jayson Tatum was seen as a prospect with the potential to be an elite on-ball shot creator. After shooting a modest 34% from 3 in college, long-range shooting was definitely not his strong suit. However, once he joined a loaded Celtics team and was now getting cleaner, less contested looks compared to the ones he was taking in college, he ended up shooting 40% from 3 in the regular season of his rookie year, immediately putting the league on notice of his shooting prowess. Over the course of the next few years, he continued to show that shooting was a major part of his game. The 3-point attempts every season steadily rose, and he was able to maintain his percentage for the most part. In 2020, he was shooting 7 threes a game and was once again able to keep his percentage above 40%, which is incredible given the volume. Mind you, this was also the year that his go-to move was his sidestep 3 going to the right, so he was making some incredibly difficult shots during this time. While the rest of his game was nowhere close to what it would eventually become in future years, this was probably the best overall jump shooting season he had to date. He followed this up with another very good shooting season in 2021 as well, knocking down 38% of his shots from outside on similar volume. 2022 was where he first started to really see some issues. While this is the year that JT officially took the leap to superstardom, it got off to quite a rocky start. Throughout the first 40 games of the year, he was putting up horrible shooting splits, especially from range, shooting just 32% from outside. The team as a whole was underperforming, and he was honestly a big reason why. Eventually he turned it on during the second half, knocking down outside shots at a much better clip to get his average up to a little north of 35% to close the season. In that year's crazy playoff run, Tatum had some really high highs, like the Game 6 performance against the Bucks in the second round to save the season, and some really low lows, like the entirety of the finals against the Warriors. But one thing that remained constant throughout the postseason was his jumper. He shot 39% on 8 attempts a game. Even during his nightmare performance in the finals, he somehow shot 45% from 3 during that series. So throughout his first 5 seasons, his jumper was one of the more reliable aspects of his game, especially in the postseason. 2023 is where things started to become pretty concerning. He was up and down like most of 2022, as his efficiency was pretty much the exact same during this season. However, his shot started to escape him in the postseason for the first time in his career. In Boston's second round matchup against the Sixers, Tatum overall shot pretty poorly until he exploded for 51 in Game 7 to save his averages. It was in the conference finals against the Heat, however, where his jumper just completely fell apart. While he was still able to put up pretty good numbers for his standards, averaging 25, 10, and 5, he shot a brutal 23% from 3. He was still finding ways to score, and was definitely still playing at a superstar level overall, but this was the first time we saw his jumper completely escape him in major moments. And it cost them, as the Celtics ended up getting upset by the Heat in 7 games. This past season was one of the more perplexing ones I've ever seen in terms of shooting variance. Throughout the regular season, JT seemed to be getting back to his old ways, shooting a very respectable 37% from distance. And I'm not sure what happened once the playoffs rolled around, but he just completely lost it. While he was amazing at pretty much every other aspect of basketball during their championship run, his efficiency dipped in a major way. He shot above 30% from 3 in just one of their 4 series in the 2024 playoffs, and it was barely north of that mark, at just 30.6%. This was quickly followed up by his dreadful Olympic performance, where his struggles continued. He didn't make a single 3 throughout the entire summer games. In fact, I'm pretty sure he legit only made 1 jump shot the entire time, as all I could find was this mid-range fall away against Germany. The most infamous moment of his summer was when he got the starting nod against South Sudan after getting a DMP in Team USA's previous game against Serbia. In his very first touch of the game, he bricked a corner 3 off the side of the backboard. Clearly, his confidence is just completely broken at the moment. It would be a much bigger deal if he didn't just lead his team to an NBA title despite the struggles, but I can see this being a major talking point of the 2025 season if he doesn't figure it out. The big question is, what on earth went so wrong? And while I honestly can't say I have a definitive answer regarding what happened, I can however rule out a couple of the common theories that people try to throw around when diagnosing this issue. The first and loudest theory that you see online is that Tatum's trainer Hanlen is the one that tinkered with his jump shot and ruined everything. However, Hanlen has been working with Jayson since he was legit 13 years old. If he was around to develop him into the elite shooter that he was in 2020 and 2021, I highly doubt he would have been the one to mess up his shot. In fact, Tatum actually saw a brief spike in his shooting splits last year after having a one-on-one session with Drew Hanlen on a West Coast trip, so we can confidently rule this out as the cause. The next thing that people usually point to is all of the muscle that he's put on over the course of the last few years. Now, he is absolutely bulked up in a big way, and definitely moves with more power and less grace than he did 4 or 5 years ago. But people just completely forget that he had an overall respectable shooting season in 2024. It was the playoffs where things went off the rails. And overall, I really don't think adding muscle is as big of a deal as people make it out to be. There's been plenty of guys who have changed their frame over the course of their career and kept their jumper intact in the process. Just look at Steph Curry, for example. And if you want to negate him as an outlier, you can look at guys like James Harden, LeBron, Lonzo, and many others who have gone on to improve their jump shots over the years while simultaneously putting on muscle. So this one is ruled out as well. The final excuse that Celtics fans try to make for their superstar is that Tatum is still dealing with the effects of a 2022 injury. While we don't know exactly when it happened, Tatum mentioned in an interview that he had been playing in the 2022 playoffs with a small chip on the bone in his wrist, which was technically a fracture. You can clearly see him dealing with this injury in the second round against Milwaukee that year, as he was in a ton of pain after a fast break dunk on Giannis. And this is something that had bothered him for a while. In early 2023, he mentioned that he may need surgery on it in that coming off season. Ultimately, he never got it, and it seems to be something that has faded away from headlines. But whenever he shoots poorly, fans always say that it was the wrist injury that messed up his shot. There's 2 reasons why this is BS. First of all, the 2022 Finals series, where he specifically said he was playing through the fracture, was arguably his best 3-point shooting series of his career, shooting 45% from 3 on over 7 attempts a game. And more importantly, the injury isn't even on his shooting hand. Yes, fans have tried to use an injury to his offhand from over 2 years ago as the source of all of his recent struggles. After ruling out all 3 of these narratives, that brings us back to square one, meaning we really don't know what could have caused this decline. At this point, I'm honestly just leaning towards saying he is a case of the yips. Something more commonly seen in baseball and golf, the yips are involuntary spasms in the wrist that can impair an athlete's ability to execute certain movements related to their sport. The yips have famously ruined professional baseball players' abilities to throw to first base, or golfers to execute putts. And when looking at potential triggers of the yips, one of the most common causes is psychological distress. Now, I'm not saying that this is definitely the reason, but I can see a world where Jayson is struggling a bit as he's become one of the most scrutinized players in the world, and all the pressure's starting to weigh on him a bit. I don't know the guy, so I can't say for sure, but since all the other potential reasons for his decline have been proven false, this is pretty much the only thing we have left to point at. It quite simply just has to be mental. And that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know in the comments what percentage you think Tatum will shoot from 3 this year, subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.